Yo, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy, Street Coder Nate. And today, guess what we getting into? We get into the data types, the different data types that our variable can hold. So we got these buckets. Remember our RAM discussion in the last video? We got those buckets, and those buckets in JavaScript specifically, those buckets can hold any type of object. Everything in JavaScript is an object. When I say everything, I mean like all data in JavaScript is represented as an object, but these objects have specific type of names to them. So you can have a string object, you can have a number object, you can have a Boolean object, you can have a regular object, and you can have an array object. We're gonna go over all of those. Typically, people don't say object at the end of those. They just say a number, an array, a Boolean. But there is this thing called an object in JavaScript that we are going to get into today as well, which is pretty much the core of everything. And so let's hop right into it, right? So data types. So the first data type that we're going to go over is the string data type, right? So the string data type. What is a string? So string goes back to honestly the basics of computer science, which is you have characters. Hate when it does that. Oh, JS data types. All right, so you have these characters all over the place, or you have these characters. Let's say A through Z, and then A through Z. My bad, y'all. My cousin be having it cold as hell up in here, and I be getting hot. Then, yeah, paranoid or not paranoid. The one bipolar, that one. But okay, A through Z. You can use the hashtags through the dashes, through the underlines, all of that, right? These are called characters. And so what a string is a multiple of these characters strung together. What do I mean by that? So A, B. This is what we would call a string, right? And then we got A, Z, and G, and all of that. You can put all of these combinations together for a string. There's like, you can even put a space, right? A space in between the string, and then G, like this is one string, right? And a period, exclamation point, all of that. You do all of that with the string. Now, what separates someone from saying AG? So like, let me not do that way. So you see how I'm saying these characters? There's only one thing I'm missing right now. What I'm missing in the syntax for creating a string would be putting quotation marks around the string. And in JavaScript, you can use single quotation marks or you can use double quotation marks. I typically use double quotation marks because I come from C++. And in C++, single quotation marks means character. And there's no character in JavaScript because a string is technically a character. Or a character is technically a string in JavaScript. So I just use the double ones. So you'll see that a lot on mine. So if we were to declare a string, let's call this if we were to declare a string called myString, well, we know how to declare a variable. We use the let keyword, right? And then we say myString at myStr. And what do we want to call the string? Well, let's just put what up though? Right? So myString is now, remember the RAM situation. We have our data allocated. My string is, let's say, this bucket, my string, and it's pointing to some bucket down here. It owns this bucket, and in it, it has now what up though? Object. String object. Cool. So that's what we just did here. We just created a string. And then we can reassign a string if we ever need to. My string equals cheese. So then we come here, erase what up though, put cheese. Cool. That's like that. That's a string. That's real simple. We use strings to like for like when we want to communicate to the computer or to the user. If we actually got some text, the text that you see on the output as output on your screen most of the time comes out as a string, 9 times out of 10. Our strings is how data is sent across the network in different bytes and packages of bytes and whatnot. And so string is a pretty good basic one that you will know. If you ever see pretty much the quotation marks around the word, you know that phrase being encompassed by the quotation marks is a string. Cool. And that's how I typically tell people to see the difference between a string and a variable. If I'm like, print this variable out, I want you to print the variable name. I don't want you to print the string of the variable or the string variable name. You feel me? Like we get there soon. All right, so that's string. The next one we got is number. The number is not too bad, right? Number is easy. 1 through 7, or my bad. Let's go. Negative infinity to positive infinity, and any number in between. Right? So that's what a number is. And so how would we create a number? It's the same way that we did creating a string. So let's call it num equal 9. And so this one's a little different though, actually, because here we have to say let str equal what up, though we have to put quotation marks around it. Well, this one, we don't have to put quotation marks. Numbers, we just put the number there. Whatever we want the number to be, that's what we put. We don't have to put any quotation marks or any special things. So I could reassign number later on too, and I could say number is 100. Always stay on 100,000 trillion. All right, so we got string, we got number. Those are the two different types of data that we got right now. Remember I said it's 5. Another different type of data, a Boolean value. Boolean. So what is Boolean? Boolean is true, false. And remember I was telling y'all in the other video about how JavaScript and all different languages or JavaScript in each language after and before have these things called keywords. And so true and false are keywords, and basically it stands for true. This is a true statement, and false, this is a false statement. And so you can have Boolean variables to represent true or false. And typically people use these as what they call flags to see if something is on, to see if something is like a certain color. So you will typically name a Boolean. So the way you do it, once again, let's call this one is black, right? Is black. And you set it to true. Like that. And so now is black is a Boolean value. But we can, like we did before, update the Boolean value to be false as well. And now is black is false. Okay. We just got our Booleans. Let's go to one that's a little tough to wrap our head around, but not really, because it's not even that bad for real. Let me not even put that paradigm on you. So it's called an array. And so an array is dope because we can declare a name. Let's call this ARR for array. And this array can actually, let me show you something dope. This array can be a list of values, whatever we want the values to be. Yo, what does this array remind you of? I bet, right? RAM. RAM is honestly just a big ass array. Yo, your hard drive is honestly just a big ass array. And then got some logic that make it really dope, but honestly it's just a big ass array, 16 gigabytes, and you can store data in it. And so what our program allows us to do is say, well, you're already storing data as an array in memory, so what we can do is break you off. We can reserve you. Not only can we reserve you one bucket, we can reserve you multiple buckets, my dog. And now these multiple buckets, what we can do is we can make these contiguous. O-U-S. And honestly, you don't even got to know that word, but I always really thought that word was dope in school, so I always remembered it. But basically, it means it comes one after the other. So your data here, so let ARR, so let's say ARR was representing, instead of having one name, we had names. And so we had Nate, you got Slope, put it in wrong order. It's okay. Shout out to my frat brothers, Dakari. And you see, we can keep going. We got all these names. And so I could have had a variable where it was like let name equal, or let name name 1 equal Nate, like that. Let name, oh shoot, my bad, let me move myself out the way. Let name 2 equal Slope, and then let name 3, technical difficulties, equal Dakari. And so when we say let, the CPU doesn't just store the name into the, or store the data into the next available open slot. Like where is that? Like if this is our, yeah, this one right here. If this is our RAM right here, and I say let again, like my string 2 equal 5 and quote. So this is a string, right? So let me put that as a string too. So what this will do, it wouldn't just, like the program wouldn't just naturally just put 5 here. Like what it would do is actually put it somewhere on random. It'll actually put it somewhere on random. So like 5 will come down here, and then it will say my string 2. And this is good for like security reasons and whatnot. So like that's cool. But like when we create, and so if we did 3 of them like this, where it was like Nate, Slope, Dakari, well, those would just be all over the RAM, right? But when we do it like this, where we create an array of names like this, well, now instead of Nate, Slope, Dakari be all over the place, it's Nate here, Slope here, Dakari here, right after the other. That makes sense. I'm gonna have to watch these videos and see if the drawing's too bad, because I know I'd be all over it, going hard. Okay. So that's an array. And the array, you don't even gotta have the same data type, because look, an array is just holding multiple data types. And so you can have a string data type inside the array. You can have a number data type. You can have Boolean data type. And this is going to even fuck you up more. You could have an array data type, and arrays look like this pretty much. You can have an array data type. And so we declared an array. How do we declare an array in JavaScript using that syntax? We go let, and we say, let's call this new array, and you use the square bracket operator. And if you want to create an empty array that looks like this with no values in it at initializing, and this is called an initialization because you're initializing the variable with data, and you don't have to initialize it with data. You could just say let new array, and it'd just be like that. Okay, cool. So that's let new array, and you got here. So that creates this empty array. Cool. You got you an empty array. Now, why is there so much lag? Okay, you got you an empty array. There we go. Cool. So now that you got you an empty array, but what if we don't want an empty array? What if I wanted to initialize it with Nate, Slope? Okay, I'm gonna actually do this right because it's throwing me off. Dakari, Slope. Right? What if this is how I had to initialize it. One string separated by a comma, CSV, comma separated values, Dakari, and here's a string too, and then Slope. And if I want any other values, I just separate them by commas, and they have to be within the square brackets, and that creates us an array. Now, we have new array, and let's say we want to get values out of our array. Let's say we had Nate, slope, or Dakari. I don't know why I keep saying slope first. Slope, right? So if I wanted Nate, I would say new array 0. And so this is called calling your variable, calling a variable. And so when you call a variable, basically you say its name. So if somebody wanted to call me, they say Nate, and I'll be like, yo, right? So if I want to call new array, I say new array, and new array is gonna be like, yo. If I want to get the value, because I actually didn't mention that earlier, you can call any variable that you declare. So here we can call on num, and when we call num, what happens is the value for num gets returned to us. So we got another variable right here, is black, and when we call on is black, the value of is black gets brought to us from that bucket. So when I call on new array, this whole array gets brought back to me, and then I can use this square bracket operator and use different indexes and tell it which index do I want the data from. So I want the index from here. I want the data from here, and this is going to bring me the word Nate. And so I can use that same logic and then get slope, or get the Kari, and then the same logic and get slope as well, right? So that's called calling a variable. And we can call on, the thing is we can declare functions, and we're going to also call on functions. So call variables, call functions, and you create your variables to store the data. You call on the variables later to retrieve that data. That's the point of having the variables. Okay, and so our last variable is called our last data type, and actually we got one more data type that I just thought about off the top of my head as we was going through this, but the last one is called an object. And so an object is real cool because an object helps us think of the real world in our brain. Like it helps us bring the real world inside of a computer. And so what do I mean by that? So with an object, I tried to explain before in the other video, the world is full of objects. The real world is full of objects. You have people objects, you have animal objects, you have building objects, you have vehicle objects. And so we are full of these different objects inside of the world. And so the computer wants to know about the different objects. And so what if we were trying to tell the computer about a person object? Well, we can create a person. The object will basically describe what a person looks like, right? And so what we would do is start giving it what is called key value pairs. Key value pairs. And so the key is typically like something like name, something that describes the object. So you'll have a whole bunch of keys, and they're all separated by commas, right? And so you got the key name, and so my name is going to be Nate. Then you got the key, let's say height, right? So my height is 5'11", right? Cool. So got my height. Let's say age, and then let's do skin tone or skin color. And we got black. And so you start to see that these key value pairs are describing the person. They're describing a person object, right? These are called properties. These key value pairs are called properties. And not only can you put in properties, you can also put in actions, because not only do objects have a description, but objects can also have actions put upon them. They can do things, and so they can do things for other objects. They can do things for themselves, and other objects can do things for them. So basically, we can create those different actions. And so one of my one of my videos, I was telling you about age. And so what if I had another key that was due birthday, and due birthday, what due birthday was a function, and we ain't heard about functions yet, but we're gonna get into it soon. And I'm gonna do an arrow function. It's a function, and a function is honestly just a list of commands that do stuff. And so this function, let's just say it does age equals age plus 1. And so I have, not only do I have skin color, age, height, and name, now I have this other key, and its value is a function. The key here is name, the value here is Nate. The key here is height, the value here is 5, or 5'11", right? And so, once again, key value pairs, in this term, when it's just storing data like this, well, that's called a property. But when the key is storing a function, well, that's called an action or a method. All right? And so this function is going to do something on the data. And what data is it doing? The age. It's going to do something to the age. So that's that. Cool. Due birthday. Cool. So let's say I just declared that person, right? And now I say person. So that's how I'm calling on a person. And if I want to get any of these attributes out of this person, I have to use the dot operator. And if I say person dot name, this will bring me back Nate. But I also can change the person's name by saying person dot name equal Dakari. Wrong. Wait to spell it. Equals Dakari. You feel me? Now I just updated that person's name. Because why? I called it let, right? So I can update that person. And then I could say person. I could call on the person's action. And we ain't learned how to call on the action just yet. But you can say person dot due birthday. Because remember, it has that action. And you put the parentheses like this. And what this will do is increment age by 1. Age goes up by 1, right? And so that's what due birthday does. And so these are the basics of JavaScript. Like those are the basic data types of JavaScript. And there's one more basic data type, and that is called null. And null means nothing. And now some people might say, does that mean like 0, or does that mean like the empty string, like a space or something? Well, in order to understand that, you gotta kind of think back to the memory thing. If I declare a variable, let's call it nothing equals null. Well, basically, I'm gonna put, if this, let's say the program reserved this much space for my variables, for my variable names. So I'm gonna go the word nothing, and then it reserved the rest of the space for my data. So the first place is gonna put null. So nothing is gonna point here, right? And what you see in the box is nothing. You don't see a 0. You don't see an empty string, because those are values. Null is actually no value in the box. There's no value in that box. There is nothing there. So me being funny, calling a variable named nothing is pointing to an empty box, a no character, a no box, an empty box, a nothing box, a box that has nothing in it. So that's significant too, because we use that for like different like testing purposes and checking conditions and whatnot in JavaScript. And so you can set things to null, and it helps it. You can reset data and different things like that. So that's one of the main reasons for using null. All right. Basically, y'all got through it. Y'all got through the basic JavaScript introduction to data types, for real. honestly, you could take that idea of the data types and take it to different languages. Other languages go deeper into the type of data that they have. Like I said, C++ has way more different data types. And as you're going to see, we're going to be able to create our own very own. We're going to be able to create our very own data types, custom ones that we are going to be able to interact with sooner than later. But right now, those was the basic data types, and so now you know how to declare variables, and you know how to pretty much you know what's going on in the background, and then you know what different types of data that you're storing in those containers when you're declaring those variables. So what does that mean? What that means, we got past a pretty easy part of JavaScript, or pretty introductory part of JavaScript, which was declaring variables and their data types. Well, before we get any further on, I want to talk about clean code. I'm a freak for clean code. I hate looking at somebody's code that's horrible. So in the next video, we're going to get into writing comments and clean code, and talk about stuff like that. So like always, you know, drop a like, subscribe, comment. I'm gonna hit you back with the comments. Also, if you hear my fire alarm, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get that fixed soon. But until then, peace.